What's up, my name is Glowhno, and today I decided to compile 7 official TF2 maps that I found to be the most unsettling. Of course, this is TF2, so there aren't many maps that fall into that category, but on top of that, the only times you'd play on these maps are when they're populated with lime green scouts and pub stompers. That's why my rankings of these maps are solely based off of how the map feels when you are completely alone. Everyone knows source games and their atmosphere, so this should be fun. If you liked the video, make sure you like and subscribe, and when you're done, check out my other TF2 video on Easter eggs. See ya. Alright, coming in at number 7, we have a CP Cloak. Everyone knows this map already, so I just decided I would throw this in here, because usually when you ask anybody, what's the creepiest map in TF2, most people would think this map, just because of the nature of it. I mean, you have your 9 mercenaries staring directly into this little box that you are residing in, alongside, 2 spawn rooms, some inclines, and, a 1 control point. It is really strange to find this map without any context. I'm assuming this is a dev map, like a testing map of sorts, so it makes sense why it's here, but I'm just putting it in here because this map would definitely be creepy to find if you had no idea this map existed and you were just searching through the Team Fortress 2 map list. Fortunately, there isn't much to this map aside from what is currently visible. An interesting point to note is that there are just cubes floating out in the skybox for almost no reason. They don't serve any purpose. Neither does the map, but there is no purpose to this map at all. You wouldn't play on this because it's not very viable, because you can't even enter your own spawn when you leave. Another interesting thing to take note of is the lack of ambience when you're playing on this map. There is absolutely no sound. You can hear your footsteps and, gunshots and whatnot, but there's no birds chirping like there would be on, like, 2 Fort, or you can't hear anything. It's really eerie. Although this is a test map, it is pretty fun to think about, how you ended up in this situation. You're like a fraction of the size of the rest of the mercs, and they're all just staring at you inside of this box. It almost makes you wonder why they're staring at you, and what's the real purpose here. Obviously, it is a test map, but it is fun to think about. Alright, well that's it for this map. On to the next one. Alright, coming in at number 6, we have Payload Bread Space. Now this map is arguably less creepy than CP Cloak, but the reason I put it higher on the list is just due to its, nature of how much bigger it is. There's more to look at, there's more to interpret about the map. As you look around, the map kind of tells a story that you don't really know exactly what happened, but you can tell this is the aftermath of something that went pretty wrong. As you can see, there's, debris and the wreckage. You see, right up in this room, there seems to be blood splatters that are being led to this door right here. Of course, if you go behind the door, there's nothing here, but it leaves a lot to the imagination when you think about what happened in this room. Why is there blood everywhere? Another creepy aspect about this map is the end, actually. There is a drill looming over the pit where you drop the payload, and in the pit where you drop the payload is actually a bread monster, which is pretty creepy to think about. How there's tentacles coming out of it, going around the entire map. It's almost apocalyptic seeming. I don't know. It's something about this is just really, weird to look at. Going even further, you find this resupply room, and entering that, you will actually find cryopods with many things in them. For one, a skeleton with bonk in his hands, some beer, some bread pods in this one, and then past that, you'll actually see a window featuring a room of just bread pods. Of course, the ambience is a little creepy too. You hear like machinery, moving around and stuff. It is a little spooky to play on this map whenever you're not really listening to anything else. Overall, this isn't the creepiest. On to our next map. At number 5, we have RD Asteroid. This map I wasn't actually expecting to be on the list at all. I kind of forgot about this map, but looking at it, I found out this map is really creepy. Now, not for the reason that the rest of the maps were creepy for, but this map feels very dreamlike, very liminal space-like, to say, to put it that way. And the reason isn't necessarily on the outside, but more on the inside. As you can see, there is dev textures almost everywhere in either spawn. The lighting and the color of the entire room, well, both rooms, just give this a very unrealistic, dreamlike feeling that isn't replicated in any of the other maps. As you can see, this room has water in it, which most liminal spaces have random water that just doesn't really lead anywhere. It doesn't have any purpose, and it also seems like this room doesn't have any purpose. It leads down to this corridor that's very oddly shaped, which adds on to the creepiness when you go up here and you see this. I mean, I don't know what this was intended for in a real-life scenario, but man, this really is creepy. On the other hand, if you go to red spawn, you'll get an entirely different feeling. Not just a liminal feeling, you know, that blue spawn had. You'll get a really creepy vibe, like something bad happened here, and you don't really know what went down. You can see wires that are, you know, spread everywhere. This door is just completely off its hinges. You know, the lighting is really odd. It feels more like a sunset, which is very strange when you just come out of blue spawn where everything is very bright and just strictly the color white. This room very much resembles, you know, blue spawn, and it has the same kind of thing going on. But this room actually has, you know, a water area, which, like blue spawn, doesn't really make much sense. Overall, this map really does convey a very liminal, dreamlike feeling, which isn't replicated in any of the other maps, as I mentioned earlier, at least that I've seen. And that's exactly why it earns a spot on this list. At number 4, we have Payload Terror Events, which is a Halloween map. It is intentionally creepy, but this map particularly is probably the creepiest Halloween map in my opinion. It's not necessarily what is on the outside, but personally for me, it's what is in the underworld. But first off, I want to get to what's on the outside because I want to go over the entire map. Marasmus is casting spells on me. But aside from Marasmus, if you look in the background, you'll actually see Ferris wheels and tents everywhere, even carousels. It's very creepy to look at when you think about, you know, it being surrounded by this stuff. It's pretty weird. Also, this guy right here, I found him while looking for this map. I actually went through his mouth because I was no-clipping. I went through his mouth and it scared me. So yeah, this guy personally I have a vendetta against. To show you the actual scary part, I had to go into Buddha mode because, you know, I don't want to die. So let's go in here real quick. And as you can see, this is the underworld. Obviously not very creepy, but the creepiest part in my opinion is the ambience in this area. Aside from that, you got two, you know, ghosts, the soldier and the demo man, both shooting at you. You'll see a skull that sometimes shoots fireballs out of his eyes. But if you listen to the background, after Marasmus stops, you'll hear the screams of the damned. Nearing the end of our list, we have TF2 Fort Invasion. This map is definitely intentionally creepy. I mean, it is an invasion map after all, but the reason this map stands out particularly out of all of the invasion maps for me is because this one, personally, is the creepiest. Aside from the obvious fact that there is a giant mothership looming over 2 Fort, and that's creepy alone, but the thought that, you know, the 2 Fort that, you know, you and me, or anyone, you know, plays on is now completely destroyed, and it seems to be taken over completely. I mean, if you look at everything, you know, blue spawn is completely tarped over. There's a UFO just crashed outside of the, you know, battlements. It's really creepy looking, especially considering, you know, I know 2 Fort. I've played, you know, this game for a long time. Seeing 2 Fort like this alone is very unsettling. On top of that, if you actually go to either red or blue's intelligence room, you will see a bunch of alien equipment. In red spawn, you'll actually find a flying saucer, you know, chilling in this room, seeming to be worked on, and it came from this hole in the ceiling. It's really strange how any of this happened. You don't really get any context as to what happened here. On the other hand, Blue's side is completely different from Red's. Red's is more, tarnished and destroyed, when Blue Team's is actually just cautioned off. You see toxic waste oozing out of these barrels over here. You'll also see toxic waste oozing out of these ones. Going towards their intelligence, you'll find a completely different thing. I mean, you will find alien equipment, but you'll also find hazmat suits. You'll also find this tentacle in this room here. I'm not really sure what the purpose of it is, but it seems to be examined on. The weirdest part of all is this room right here, where you can see coordinates on a map of the entire globe. Not really sure what any of these coordinates mean, if it's where aliens were sighted and it's Blue Team, discussing this, or if it's more where aliens are gonna go next. The entire map, it seems abandoned. I mean, whenever you're playing with other people it's not, but you don't really know what happened outside of that, which definitely earns this a spot on the list. Alright, coming in at number 2, we have Payload Whatville Event. And this map is not on the list for the reason you may think. Definitely not because the textures are so awful to look at, but for a completely different reason. As you can see, this map, it looks to be very bright and cheery. I mean, the wallpaper everywhere, the trees everywhere. It should look completely different than how it does. I mean, if you look in the sky, you don't see a bright and, cheery sky. You see a dark and gloomy one, and you see snow falling from the sky, but instead of giving it the impression that it's just snowing, it gives it the impression that this isn't snow at all, and probably like ash. It feels like a nuclear winter more than a snowstorm. On top of that, if you start to explore around the map, instead of finding, wallpaper covered in everything and, presents or cheery decorations, you'll find industrial equipment. You'll see shipping containers and crates and barrels that do not match the textures of the rest of the map. Looking at the rest of the map, you'll see a lot of areas that really give this place a creepy feeling, almost like this map isn't what it seems. It almost feels like the bright and cheery nature is to cover up something far worse. Overall, this map's going on number 2, but if I was solely going off of the textures alone, I would definitely put this map at number 1, because holy... Coming in at number 1, our final map is Payload Pier. Now this map I genuinely was not expecting to be on this list when I was looking through these maps, but this map really surprised me with how eerie it feels to be on it. I mean, if you look out into the distance, you'll see nothing but water for miles. I mean, maybe some islands, but there's no civilization for miles. It almost gives that feeling that you're really stranded here. On top of that, if you look around, you'll notice there are buildings here. It's very densely populated with houses and shops and such, and there's lights on in some of these rooms, but there's no one here. It feels very eerie, almost like, everyone left in a hurry. Now, when you're playing with your friends on this map, you don't really get to experience the creepy nature of it. I mean, you only see, everyone else on the map, so it doesn't really give you time to take in how the map looks and feels. But when you're playing on it, you'll hear a bunch of random soundscapes that play, throughout the entire map. Sometimes you'll hear, wood creaking, or sometimes you'll hear, clinking noises. It really depends on where you're at. On top of that, you'll also hear, thunder striking in the distance, and it's really creepy to play on when you're not listening to anything else but the game. This area alone really gives an apocalyptic feeling, like something happened that you're not really aware of, like you woke up and everyone was gone one day. On top of that, if you look over here, past this, the town, you'll see a carnival area, or maybe a fair of sorts. You'll see a bunch of games, and then you'll see a Ferris wheel that's still turning. And what's really creepy about this, because as far as I know, Ferris wheels don't just, start spinning on their own. Usually you have some guy or woman operating the machine. So to think that, they just left it running, kind of gives the feeling like they were just, too in a hurry to, turn it off. Overall, this map isn't necessarily creepy just based off of the fact that it's, a scary map, but it's more like what it leaves to the imagination. Like, this entire map is not big, but if you really sit down and take a look at everything, really get the feeling that, something worse happened here, for sure. But anyways, that wraps up the list. On to the outro. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, it'd mean a lot to me if you liked and subscribed. Anyways, I gotta go find these 8 pages. See ya!